Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's video. If you have ever held an old coin in your hand and wondered what stories it carries, then you are in the right place. In this series, we are going to explore some of the most fascinating pieces of Australian coinage, specifically the 20-cent coins from the years 1966, 1967, 1975, 1976, and 1980. At first glance, these coins may look ordinary, just small discs of metal with a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on one side and an unusual creature called the platypus on the other. But the reality is, each one of these coins is a snapshot of history, a piece of culture, and in some cases, a hidden treasure for collectors. Coin collecting, also known as numismatics, is not just about money. It's about preserving history. Every coin reflects the political, social, and economic context of its time. When Australia switched to the decimal currency system in 1966, it was a monumental shift. The nation moved away from the old British system of pounds, shillings, and pence, and introduced dollars and cents. This wasn't just a financial reform, it was a moment of national identity. The coins that came out that year were symbols of a new era for Australia, and the 20-cent coin became one of the most recognizable pieces of that transformation. Let's take a moment to talk about the design itself. On the obverse side of these coins, you see Queen Elizabeth II. Her portrait has been featured on coins throughout the Commonwealth for decades. But here, in the mid-20th century, her youthful profile symbolizes continuity and unity across nations tied to the crown. The reverse side, however, is purely Australian. The platypus, a unique animal found only in Australia, was chosen as a symbol of the country's distinct identity. Think about it. No other coin in the world features this fascinating creature, an animal so strange that when European scientists first saw it, they thought it was a hoax. With its duck-like bill, webbed feet, and beaver-like tail, the platypus stands as a reminder that Australia is unlike anywhere else on Earth. The story of the 20-cent coin begins in 1966, the very first year of decimal coinage. That makes the 1966 issue historically important. Millions were produced, but because it was the inaugural year, collectors often prize well-preserved examples. Moving into 1967, Australia was settling into its new currency system. The second year of issue didn't carry the same groundbreaking significance as 1966, but it remains part of the early decimal series, making it appealing to those who want a complete collection. By the time we reached 1975 and 1976, the world had changed. Economically, the 1970s were a turbulent decade globally, with oil crises and inflation affecting many countries. For Australia, coins minted during this period capture the spirit of resilience and modernization. The portrait of Queen Elizabeth on these coins was slightly updated, reflecting not just the passage of time, but also the continuity of tradition. Collectors often pay attention to such portrait changes because they tell a subtle story of eras passing. Then comes 1980. The coinage of this year represents a new phase, as Australia moved into the modern economic climate of the 1980s. While the basic design of the 20-cent coin remained the same, the significance lies in its role as a marker of time. For collectors today, a 1980 20-cent coin might not seem rare at first glance, but as always in numismatics, condition, minting errors, and historical context can turn an ordinary coin into a prized possession. It's important to realize that when we talk about these coins, 1966, 1967, 1975, 1976, and 1980, we're not just talking about metal. We're talking about milestones in a country's story. The transition to decimal currency in 1966, the establishment of stability in 1967, the trials and triumphs of the 1970s, and the modernizing push of the 1980s. All of that is captured in these small circular tokens. So as we dive deeper into each part of this video, keep in mind that coin collecting is more than just finding out how much money something is worth. It's about discovering the journey behind it. And believe me, the journey of these Australian 20-cent coins is worth every second of your attention. Now that we've set the historical stage, let's take a closer look at what makes these Australian 20-cent coins so visually distinctive. Because when it comes to coin collecting, design is more than just artwork. It's identity, symbolism, and storytelling captured in metal. On the obverse, or what many people call the front of the coin, we find the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. She was the face of the Commonwealth for decades, and her image on currency was more than a formality. It was a reminder of Australia's deep historical ties to the British Crown. In the earliest issues, such as the 1966 and 1967 coins, the Queen's portrait showed her youthful profile, crowned and elegant. It reflected not only monarchy, but also stability during a time of transition. People were learning to use an entirely new money system, and the familiar presence of the Queen gave the change a sense of continuity. By the mid-1970s, however, subtle changes began to appear. The portrait of the Queen was updated, showing her as a more mature monarch. Collectors often study these differences carefully. For someone glancing quickly, it may look the same, but numismatists, coin experts, see it as a timeline of history carved into metal. From youth to maturity, the changing portrait marks the passage of time and connects each coin to a specific chapter of her reign. Now let's turn the coin over to the reverse, where one of the most beloved Australian animals takes center stage: the platypus. Imagine a creature with the bill of a duck, the tail of a beaver, and the webbed feet of an otter. It sounds like something out of a fantasy story, yet the platypus is very real and uniquely Australian. Featuring this animal on the 20-cent coin was more than a design choice. It was a declaration of national pride. Just as the kangaroo and emu symbolize Australia in other contexts, the platypus symbolizes uniqueness, resilience, and the natural wonder of the continent. For collectors, this pairing, the royal portrait on one side and the platypus on the other, is powerful. It reflects Australia's balance between heritage and independence. On one side, tradition and continuity through the Queen. On the other, distinct identity through native wildlife. The message is subtle but clear. Australia is part of a larger Commonwealth, yet proudly its own nation. Another point worth mentioning is the craftsmanship. The fine lines of the Queen's hair, the detailed ripples of the platypus swimming through water. These were not quick sketches. They were carefully engraved by skilled artists, ensuring that every coin carried both function and beauty. Over time, wear and tear can soften these details, which is why collectors place such a premium on uncirculated coins that still show sharp definition. Ladies and gentlemen, the symbolism of these coins doesn't stop at imagery. It extends to the very material. Made of copper nickel, the coins were designed to last for decades in circulation. Unlike paper money that wears out, coins endure. They silently pass through thousands of hands, surviving recessions, celebrations, and everyday life. That endurance is part of what makes them valuable, not just economically, but historically. So, when you hold a 1966 20-cent coin, you're holding the very first step into a new monetary system, crowned by the youthful Queen. When you hold a 1975 coin, you're holding evidence of subtle transformation, a slightly older portrait that tells us years have passed. And when you hold a 1980 coin, you're holding a bridge into the modern era. Each design is a frozen moment in time, like a miniature historical document you can carry in your pocket. Collectors often say, it's the little details that make the biggest difference. And that's true here. From the curve of the Queen's crown to the playful movement of the platypus, every element tells a story. The obverse and reverse together embody heritage, identity, and artistry, all in a coin that, for most people, was just everyday change. In the next part of this series, we'll dive into numbers, how many of these coins were minted, which years are rarer, and how that affects their value today. But before we move on, remember this: design is not just decoration. It's history, culture, and meaning pressed into metal. And the Australian 20-cent coin is one of the best examples of how a simple design can carry a nation's story for generations. We've explored the history and design of these fascinating coins. It's time to move into one of the most important topics for collectors: mintage and rarity. Because while design captures our attention, rarity drives true value. Let's start at the very beginning, 1966. This was the launch of decimal currency, and naturally, the government needed a massive supply of coins to replace the old system. Millions upon millions of 20-cent pieces were minted in that first year, making them widely available. However, here's the twist. Because 1966 marked the first year of Australia's new money, collectors view it as historically significant. Even though it isn't rare in numbers, its symbolic importance makes it a must-have for any serious decimal collection. Now let's move to 1967. The second year of decimal coinage saw another high mintage, ensuring that the public quickly became comfortable with the new currency system. From a purely numerical perspective, 1967 coins are not particularly scarce. But when you look at condition, the story changes. Many circulated heavily, meaning finding one in pristine, uncirculated quality can be challenging. For collectors, that condition gap is what transforms an ordinary coin into a valuable piece. Jump forward to 1975 and 1976. These years are especially interesting. Mintage remained high, but these coins fall into a category collectors sometimes call transition years. Why? Because they carry updated portraits of Queen Elizabeth II, marking a visual change that sets them apart. While not as rare as some other issues, these coins gain value through their historical context and design differences. Now let's talk about 1980. This year, the 20-cent coin entered the new decade with strong production numbers. By itself, the 1980 issue is common and easy to find. But here's where rarity sneaks in: error coins. Mistakes at the mint, such as off-center strikes, double stamping, or planchet errors, are highly prized by collectors. For a 1980 20-cent coin with such errors, the value can skyrocket far beyond face value. In fact, error coins across all years, whether from 1966, 1967, 1975, 1976, or 1980, are considered hidden gems in the numismatic world. Another important factor to consider is limited mint sets. Some years, the Royal Australian Mint released special collector sets with coins in uncirculated or proof condition. These coins were never meant for everyday circulation, and as a result, they remain far scarcer than their mass-circulated counterparts. If you come across a proof 20-cent coin from any of these years, you're holding something significantly rarer than the average pocket change. Ladies and gentlemen, rarity is not just about how many coins were minted. It's about how many survived in good condition. Think about it. Millions of people carried these coins every day, tossed them in change jars, slid them across counters, and dropped them into vending machines. Most became scratched, worn, and dented over time. So while a year like 1967 might not be rare by numbers, a flawless specimen graded by a professional service could be worth many times more than a circulated piece. The lesson here is simple. Don't just ask how many were made. Ask how many remain in collectible quality. Because when supply shrinks and demand grows, value follows. That's the magic of rarity. In our next part, we'll dive into collector value, how condition, rarity, and demand translate into real-world prices. But remember this, whether common or rare, whether error or proof, each of these coins holds a special place in Australia's numismatic story. The question isn't only how many were minted. The question is how many have survived the test of time. We've talked about history, design, and rarity. Now comes the question every collector, and even casual viewers, want answered. What are these coins actually worth? Value is the part of the story where history meets the marketplace. And the Australian 20-cent coins from 1966, 1967, 1975, 1976, and 1980 each carry their own story of worth. First, let's establish the golden rule of coin collecting. Condition is king. Two coins from the same year can have drastically different values depending on their state of preservation. A heavily circulated 1966 20-cent coin might only fetch its face value or slightly more. But the very same coin in mint uncirculated condition, where every detail of the Queen's portrait and the platypus is sharp, can command several dollars, sometimes even higher, especially when graded by professional services. Now let's take the years one by one. 1966 coins are highly sought after because they represent the very first year of decimalization. In circulated form, they're common, but in pristine condition, they can bring a premium. Collectors especially chase proof versions, or those in original mint sets. 1967 coins, as we discussed, are less historically unique but still important as part of the early series. Again, value depends almost entirely on grade. A circulated piece might not be worth much, but a certified uncirculated example can easily attract buyers. 1975 and 1976 coins are considered transition pieces, showing updated portraits of the Queen. Their values are modest in circulated condition, but proof or high-grade versions often sell for significantly more. 1980 coins are very common, but here's where the market gets interesting. Error coins from this year are highly valuable. Off-center strikes or double-die varieties can sometimes sell for hundreds of dollars at auction. It proves the point that collectors pay not only for rarity in numbers, but also for uniqueness in minting flaws. Another factor in determining value is demand. Numismatics is driven by what collectors want, and trends shift over time. For example, interest in decimal coins has grown steadily as younger collectors seek affordable entry points into the hobby. 20-cent coins offer exactly that, an accessible way to start a collection without needing a huge budget. This steady demand keeps their market alive. Ladies and gentlemen, let's also talk about auctions and online marketplaces. A coin's book value is just a guideline. The real market value is determined by what collectors are willing to pay. Sometimes an especially sharp, well-struck coin will attract bidding wars, far exceeding published prices. Other times, common coins may struggle to sell even at modest prices. That's the nature of the market, unpredictable but exciting. In recent years, the digital era has opened new opportunities. Platforms like eBay and specialized auction houses make it easier than ever for collectors around the world to buy and sell Australian coins. This global exposure increases competition, which can drive prices higher for the rarest or most desirable examples. But remember, value isn't only about money. For many collectors, the emotional value, the thrill of finding a missing year, the pride of owning a pristine specimen, is priceless. Yes, dollars matter, but passion is what keeps the hobby alive. So when you ask, how much are these coins worth? The honest answer is, it depends. It depends on year, condition, rarity, demand, and sometimes just the right buyer at the right time. But whether worth a few cents or a few $100s, these coins carry stories far greater than their price tag. In our final part, we'll wrap up this journey with conclusions, tips for collectors, and why these 5 coins remain timeless pieces of history. But always remember, the true value of a coin lies not just in its price, but in the story it tells and the history it preserves. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the final part of our journey through the Australian 20-cent coins of 1966, 1967, 1975, 1976, and 1980, let's step back and look at the bigger picture. What have we discovered, and what lessons can collectors, both new and experienced, take from these fascinating pieces of history? First and foremost, these coins remind us that money is never just money. The 20-cent coin is a small, everyday object, yet it reflects sweeping national changes. The leap into decimalization in 1966, the consolidation of a new system in 1967, the evolving identity of the monarchy in the 1970s, and the forward push into modernity by 1980. Each coin is a snapshot of history, frozen in time. For collectors, the key takeaway is this: look beyond the face value. At first glance, these coins might seem ordinary. Millions were minted, and they circulated widely. But the real magic lies in the details: condition, mint errors, proof sets, and historical context. A circulated coin may be worth little more than 20 cents, while a pristine, proof-quality coin or a rare error could be worth hundreds. The difference lies in careful observation and knowledge. So, what practical tips can we offer for those interested in collecting these coins? 1. Learn to spot condition. The sharper the detail, the higher the value. Check the queen's hair, the crown, and the fine lines on the platypus. Wear and tear erase value quickly. 2. Search for errors. Off-center strikes, double dies, and planchet flaws can transform an ordinary coin into a rare treasure. Always examine your coins closely under good light. 3. Consider proof and mint sets. If you come across one of these, you're holding something much rarer than the average circulation coin. Proofs in particular are highly desirable among serious collectors. 4. Stay updated on market trends. Coin values fluctuate depending on collector demand. What seems common today may rise in popularity tomorrow. Following auctions and online markets helps you stay ahead. 5. Collect with passion, not just profit. Yes, coins can be valuable, but the joy of collecting goes far beyond money. It's about holding history in your hand, discovering hidden stories, and building a personal connection with the past. Ladies and gentlemen, the Australian 20-cent coins we've explored are more than currency. They are tiny storytellers, carrying the narrative of a nation's growth, resilience, and identity. From the excitement of 1960 SXS decimal launch to the maturity of the late 1970s and the new decade of 1980, these coins allow us to touch history in a way few objects can. So, the next time you come across a 20-cent piece, don't just toss it aside. Take a closer look. It might be a common coin, or it might be a rare variety. Either way, it carries meaning. And that meaning is what makes coin collecting one of the most rewarding hobbies in the world. Thank you for joining me on this numismatic journey. If you enjoyed this exploration of Australia's 20-cent coins, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the fascinating world of coins and currency. Until next time, keep searching, keep collecting, and remember, every coin has a story if you're willing to listen.